Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am so thrilled to have all of you focus learners joining us today. We are going to be tackling a massive transition that pretty much everyone stepping onto a college campus wrestles with, even if they're doing a really good job of hiding it. Today, we're going to demystify exactly how university learning is fundamentally different from high school. So, if you've recently started higher education and feel like you've suddenly, forgotten how to be a student, stick around because you are in exactly the right place. So you absolutely aced high school, right? But now you're kind of struggling at university. Let me start by just validating exactly what you might be feeling right now. The start of university can feel overwhelmingly different. You might have been top of your class, straight A's, the whole shebang, and yet you're finding university incredibly challenging at first. I want you to hear this loud and clear. That does not mean you're struggling academically, and it definitely doesn't mean you aren't smart enough to be there. Rather, the entire academic system around you has just completely changed. To help you master your new academic life, we've put together a really clear roadmap for today. First, the great academic shift. Second, the independence expectation. Third, beyond remembering information. Fourth, assessments and active feedback. And finally, when to ask for help. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the great academic shift. Basically, how the rules of the game have completely changed. Look, the core issue here isn't your ability. It's that the entire way you are expected to learn has shifted. It's actually fascinating when you realize that everything you built your success on in high school was perfectly adapted for that one specific environment. But university? That's a wild new ecosystem. It requires brand new habits, new mindsets, and a completely different approach to how you absorb and use information. Moving right along to section 2, the independence expectation. This is the big shift from being monitored to being totally self-driven. Think about the contrast here for a second. Back in school, your learning was highly structured by other people. Teachers reminded you about homework, they laid out exactly what you needed to study, and they checked your progress daily. But at university, that responsibility lands squarely on your shoulders. Sure, you get the syllabus, the readings, the academic support, but the actual execution is entirely up to you. You are the one who has to decide when to study, how long to spend on a tough concept, and how to actually keep yourself on track. And this brings us to what we like to call the iceberg concept of university workloads, the time you actually spend sitting in scheduled classes, your lectures, your tutorials, your online sessions. That's really just the tip of the iceberg. It's a tiny slice of your actual workload. The vast majority of it, that is your outside independent work. Because, and this is crucial, just attending class is not the same as completing your learning. If a course only has a few hours of scheduled classes a week, there is no way it's just a few hours per week course. You've got to do the readings, watch the supplemental videos, work through examples. The real learning happens when you're completely unsupervised. So what exactly are you doing with all that independent time? That brings us to section 3, beyond remembering information. It's time for the cognitive leap. At school, you could honestly succeed just by memorizing the material your teacher gave you and reproducing it accurately on a test. Well, mostly anyway. It was largely about memorization and recall. But at university, things get a whole lot more interesting. You are increasingly asked to apply, analyze, evaluate, and integrate knowledge. You aren't just memorizing facts anymore. You're actively sense-making. And let me tell you, it can be incredibly jarring the first time you're handed a complex problem you've never seen before, and you suddenly realize, wait, there might actually be more than one right answer here. Because of that, the why suddenly matters way more than the final number. In a university assessment, your final recommendation, or that exact digit you calculate, it usually isn't the most important part of your answer. It's your ability to defend your methodology. Can you clearly articulate your analytical process? Because that, right there, is what university-level thinking is really all about. Okay, let's look at section 4, assessments and active feedback, or how we are redefining the grade. This grading shift is a massive wake-up call for a lot of students. School grading is usually built on lots of frequent, smaller assignments. But university, you might only have 2 or 3 assessments for the entire semester, but each one carries significantly more weight. Because the stakes are so much higher, that old high school habit of caffeine-fueled cramming the night before, it's incredibly risky now. You literally cannot fake your way through deep analysis at the 11th hour. To handle these heavy-hitting assignments, you really have to break them into stages. You need to understand the problem, do your research and analysis, write a solid draft, and then check and revise it. And how do you possibly fit all that in? By starting early. And hey, starting early doesn't mean you're chained to your desk 24/7. It just means you're giving your brain the breathing room it actually needs to process complex research before you have to hit submit. Now, what's really fascinating here is how we need to view getting those assignments back. At university, you won't always receive immediate or super personalized feedback on every single thing you do. But when you do get it, you have to use it actively. Feedback is absolutely not just a postmortem on the grade you got. It is a feed-forward tool. It's critical data designed specifically to help you perform better next time around. Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, when to ask for help and how we can break the stigma around it. This is, honestly, perhaps the biggest adjustment of all. Back in high school, if you were slipping, a teacher would likely notice and pull you aside to check in. But at university, your lecturers simply may not know. If you're confused about a project or if life throws you a curveball that affects your studying, your professors won't automatically realize what's happening from the front of a lecture hall with hundreds of students. Asking a question is not a sign that you don't belong at university. Asking for clarification, going to office hours, using the support services, these are totally normal, expected parts of being an independent student. You are expected to communicate. So let's bring all of this together into a practical blueprint for success. Being a successful university learner doesn't mean you just magically understand everything immediately. It means taking responsibility for your own journey. So plan your time meticulously. Actively engage with the materials outside of class. Start your assignments early. Actually use your feedback. Ask questions. And above all, seek support early before a tiny point of confusion snowballs into a major problem. If you take absolutely nothing else away from this explainer, please remember this. The transition is not just about studying harder. If you just push yourself to the point of burnout using your old high school methods, it's not going to work. It is about learning differently. At school, the learning process was organized around you. At university, you are gradually learning how to organize that entire process for yourself. And honestly, developing that independence is probably one of the most important things you'll take away from your degree. Because at the end of the day, university is fundamentally about learning how to learn. You are the architect of your own education now. So, looking at all the tools and expectations we've just unpacked, how will you organize your process today? Take a second, look at your schedule, and really take control of your learning journey. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I wish you absolute success as you master this great academic shift.